Whether you're dreaming of a retirement with sand between your toes and a cold one in your hand, hitting the road to chase the winds of adventure, or spending time with your grandchildren, this show is intended to help you get there. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement with your host, Josh Knoll. You've worked too hard throughout your career to spend your retirement worrying. So sit back, kick up your feet, because we've got lots of financial tips and tricks to share to help you get exactly where you want to be. Here's Josh.
Hello, Lower Alabama. Hello, Gulf Coast. Welcome in. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement. That's right. Man, we got a great show for you today. Thanks you for joining us. We do. We're excited to have you. Josh Knoll here, joined by the one and only Michelle Lee Melton. The hot sauce to my breakfast burrito.
Yes.
The jalapenos to my cheese nachos. How you doing?
I'm busy. Hence,
Yeah,
I
I
have
heard.
not been in the studio with you.
Yeah,
and
but you're
listeners.
back.
For now.
Listeners demanding you come back. Michelle and I are back here in Coastal College's recording studio, beautiful downtown Fairhope, ready to put on another great show for those of you tuning in. Listeners, Michelle and I are here today to discuss financial topics relevant to those of you in or near retirement, living your best life along our part of the Gulf Coast. Here's what we got in store. First segment, deep dive on our topic of the day. Second segment, about 25 minutes-ish past the hour. That's Michelle with the headlines of the week. Then roughly 45 minutes-ish past the hour, stick around for our third segment. We call it Josh's Crystal Ball and Big Mouth. So buckle up. We got a lot to get to. Quick background on me for those of you new to the show. Again, my name is Josh Knoll. I'm a fee-based financial advisor. I hold my FINRA Series 65 securities license, and I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. That's a 100% locally owned, 100% independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. You can find more information on me and the team at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors by visiting our website, gulfcoastfa.com, or feel free to give us a call anytime, 251-327-2124. Now, if you just missed that contact info, grab a pen and pad because we will repeat it several times throughout the show. All right, Michelle. For your welcome back episode.
All right.
I wanted to have a little fun, so I invented a little game
fun.
for us. Plus, we both.
Oh, it's a game?
It's a game.
Are there prizes?
No, the listener's education.
What kind of game is that then?
Yeah, we'll make a prize for you. Regular listeners know that I tend to be skeptical. We both tend to be a little skeptical of the things related to my own industry, financial services, including a lot of financial advertising and glossy marketing content, sometimes masquerading as responsible financial advice, but as Michelle knows firsthand, I get very irritated when I hear someone in my line of work espouse a bunch of info that is nothing more than sales BS. So the problem is, in times of market turbulence, this type of misinformation gets shouted from the rooftops. So with that in mind, Michelle, what we're going to do today, play a little game that I invented called Just Stop It.
Stop it.
Yeah, just stop it. It's kind of like true or false, except everything you're going to say is false.
Oh.
And I'm going to try to smack some sense into those everybody listening and considering some of these financial tactics. You got it?
I do. Okay.
Well, you're up.
All right.
Just stop it.
Okay, here we go. Investors should hold 5 to 10% of their portfolio in cryptocurrency. I know the answer to this.
Just stop it. Listen.
Negative.
This is a number that got just made up because it sounds reasonable, right? You know, if you just 5 or 10%, it's no big deal, not that much of exposure. But listen, folks, if you hold 10% of your investment assets in an asset that literally can go to zero overnight, that means that you'll have to make a 20% return on your portfolio to recoup your mistake. And getting a 20% return can sometimes involve more risk than maybe what you're comfortable doing. It's one thing to hold a diversified portfolio of well-established assets that just happen to be down 10% because of a market dip or a market sell-off. It's another thing to have an asset that can lose all of its value with no proven path of ever regaining that value. So to be fair to the crypto, let me be a little more, explain a little more. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. There's, in my opinion, in Crypto Bro, you can call me up and educate me more if you want, but there's 4 broad types of cryptocurrencies. There's Bitcoin, which is kind of the OG coin. There's stable coins, which are pegged to the US dollar. There's NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which I think are more or less, for the most part, useless. And there's meme coins, which are even more useless than NFTs. So If you want to invest in crypto, understand it is a zero-sum game. There's no underlying intrinsic value. It's not like gold where you can hold it. It's not like a stock where there's going to be some type of asset or potentially some type of revenue. There's none of these things. It's called the greater fool theory of investing. The asset is worth more if you can find a fool that's greater than you to pay you more than you paid for it. That said, if you want to dive into those things, we always recommend our clients, if you want to do that, have a separate account, play around with it, and make sure it's money that if it all goes away, is not going to impact your overall portfolio. But for the love of Pete, do not put 5 to 10% of your investment portfolio into crypto. Just
Okay,
stop
I have a
it.
sidebar question.
Sidebar, yes.
Okay, for our listeners. So is 5 to 10% a magic percentage for any other type of asset in a diversified portfolio?
That's a great question.
Right, because in other words, there's going to be lots of things. There can be lots of things that could be 50%, but then you
Correct.
have other tiddlywink stuff. So
More often than not, when you see somebody just gently suggesting something like that, they're suggesting something that probably should not be in your portfolio.
Right.
However, in broad terms, we tend to, if we've got 100% pie, any financial advisor or any long-term investor will know that there's going to be certain percentage division. What's in equities? What's in fixed income? What's in the equities?
Bonds, stocks.
Well, that would be fixed income.
Okay.
Stocks will be equity. And then from there, you can break it down further. Should you hold, say, 20% in international equities? Well,
Okay.
now that's a reasonable
Sure.
argument to make. But saying that you need to hold 10% in a very new, still technologically
True.
new,
Yeah.
and very risky asset is a no-no for your qualified retirement plans.
this is a statement. You should convert your traditional IRA to a gold IRA. First of all, I've never even heard of a gold IRA. So that sounds made up in and of itself.
It's out there.
Okay.
All right, so you're saying you should convert your traditional IRA
to a gold IRA.
Okay,
That's
all
what
right.
people were telling me to do.
So just stop it. So now listen, owning some gold, and gold historically has been a hedge against inflation because gold tends to
And
have
we talk about hedging later.
correct, yeah, different type of hedging, but it's intended to be a hedge against inflation, and that's fine. A significant chunk of my clients have some form of gold exposure. What you're referring to is the advertising that is saying take all of your IRA assets and put them into a gold IRA. That is a just stop it line. Michelle is so the history. If I go into the history of gold returns, Michelle, just broadly, because we don't want to get down too many rabbit holes, but historically, gold has increased in value roughly half of what stocks have increased in value over the last 100 years.
Okay.
So on one hand, you're leaving 50% potential gain over a long period of time. But on the other hand, to be fair, that's not bad. I mean, you would think it'd actually be a little bit worse. But what we've had, particularly over the last couple of decades, is rising inflation. So there has been an absolute flight to gold. What we are saying, so that we're very specific here, so you folks understand, what we're saying is beware the sales gimmick, the one-trick pony that tells you to do all of something. It's kind of it's a nice juxtaposition to what you just said a minute ago. Well, it's just 10%, right? So if I was trying to sell something and I wanted to appear very bold and very certain of myself, I'd say let's do 100%, right? So, folks, do not do 100% into gold. That's not how you do it. You're leaving too much potential compounded growth on the table versus having equity exposures. All right, very good.
Okay.
This is good because we're both a little irritable, so we can just say just stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah, we're tired. It's been a long day.
And people are wearing me out. Okay.
Okay.
I have no worries about retirement because my advisor, salesperson, set me up with an annuity that guarantees 7% return with no downside risk.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I helped put this outline together, but you've heard people say that.
Correct.
Yes. Just stop it. Look, folks, when someone says that it's a guaranteed 7% return with no downside risk, saying an annuity has a 7% floor or a minimum 7% guaranteed growth, it's like my grandpa Eldon would say, that's just a daggum lie. This is the biggest misconception among annuity consumers and researchers that have been pitched an annuity. The 7% growth guarantee is not on your cash value. Where's your cash value come? It comes from the premium you place into the annuity contract. So when they say that guaranteed 7% growth, they're not talking about 7% growth on your cash value. They're talking about 7% guaranteed growth on the formula that is used to calculate your future income, all right? Does that formula, that guaranteed 7% increase in your future income payout have value? Yes, absolutely. Does it guarantee a future income amount? typically there's a chart that's going to get you pretty close to what you're looking at when you have an income rider. But can you walk away with a lump sum of money that experienced 7% guaranteed growth over the life of the annuity contract at the end of that contract? The answer is no. That's not how it works, because if there was a product that guaranteed 7% growth with no downside, every person on earth would own one. Countries would flood trillions of dollars in this product. So that should tell you all something.
Right.
It's never as good as it seems. These things have a purpose. Just understand what you're actually buying. You're buying a 7% guaranteed increase on an income rider. Nothing wrong with that. It's just often, I've seen it, for you annuity guys who are listening, and you tell me no one's ever said that, I promise you, I've had at least half a dozen people come in and say, well, my advisor said that I get 8% guaranteed and I can never lose money. That's just not how it works. It's called the return of your money versus the return on your money, and that is a significant difference.
Yeah.
Just stop it.
Okay.
All right?
Next up, I can totally trust my advisor that I met through a dinner seminar because it looks like he or she makes a lot of money. These are one of our favorites.
That's
to pick
what that
on.
one's a little close to the. Yeah, we know. Just stop it first. All right. So listeners need to understand. There's a couple of little dirty secrets in my business, financial services. One, most of the time, if your advisor is driving an insanely expensive car, they probably have an insanely expensive lease on it. Okay. Two, financial advisors are not that great about following their own advice.
Is that true?
That is very true.
Wow.
In fact, a lot of advisors that have minimums on their clients' accounts, like you got to have a certain minimum.
Sure,
to
yeah,
be,
you hear about those all the time.
right. A lot of those advisors would not meet their own minimums. I hate to tell you this, Michelle. So when there's nothing wrong, I'm probably on one end of the spectrum because I'm what most people would consider fairly frugal. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yes, especially when it comes to saving food. Like I grew up doing.
Oh my gosh, and like in the Depression, it's ridiculous.
So, but on the other end, there are absolutely and listen, I'm very proud of our business. We have plenty of success. I could drive a nice car, yada, yada, yada.
You could.
Yeah, I could.
But you don't.
I don't, because I pay cash. But on the other end of the spectrum, obviously there's advisors that have been very successful and can afford that nice car. There's nothing wrong with that. The point of what Michelle is bringing up is, just when you go to these things, these dinner seminars, understand this. And a lot of times they are put on by somebody that's got a 3-piece suit and drives a fancy car and wears expensive watches and all that. For those dinner seminars, which are very expensive, as Michelle and I know, because
Yes,
we gave it a swing a
we
couple
did.
years ago.
Yep.
It never will do it
Did
again.
not pan out.
Did not pan out, and fooey on me. But the reason it didn't is because to make those dinner seminars work, there often has to be a product to sell that pays a large upfront commission.
Mm-hmm.
So in my world, in the fee-based or fee-only financial advisor world, it's hard to do a dinner seminar that costs thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to put on, because it takes a long time for a client in our world to become profitable in the fee-for-service world. That's why, in my opinion, it's a better setup for long-term relationships when you're trying, the investor and the advisor are both trying to get maximum value out of the long term from the relationship. But on the dinner seminars, they got to find something that pays a large upfront commission to make the dinner worth it. So enter fixed index annuities and annuity shops. Dinner seminars typically are going to be the salesperson or the advisor that's putting them on. Usually,
Fish or chicken.
Are going to, yeah, right, or meat station, are usually going to be backed by what's called an IMO. That's an independent marketing organization. And with that, if you schedule a conversation, listen, some of those advisors do a good job. They're smart guys and gals, usually guys, but smart guys and gals. But just understand, if you decide to make an appointment, you are absolutely going to have a fixed index annuity put on the table as part of the solution, all right? And the biggest problem, probably one of the aggravations things for me, Michelle, is because I deal with this after the effects,
They've
if you
been
will.
swindled, sort
Not
of.
swindled, but after they haven't been, they haven't had their eyes, walked in with their eyes fully wide open, is a lot of times if you've ever done business with somebody at a dinner seminar, and as soon as the ink is dry on the paperwork, you have now been directed to do future communications through a middleman, i.e. a servicing advisor, and you have to schedule this appointment weeks or months out with the original advisor that you met at the dinner seminar. Well, guess what? Congratulations, you just got made part of an annuity shop.
Well, that sounds delightful, and I mean, at least maybe they can talk to a junior advisor and that be a real person.
That's fair, yeah, as
Because
opposed to your
that's my
experience that you
gripes
had.
as of late.
recently.
Yes.
Yes. This is true, but the junior advisor typically is not going to have the wealth of
Sure.
knowledge.
No. And
There's
it's
nothing
kind
wrong,
of a slap in the face.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the servicing advisor. Again, my headache, as with everything, is this thing. So a lot of times when you're going down that road, it plays on people's perceptions. This guy's doing well. He's putting on a fancy dinner. He's buying me a fancy dinner. He's got a nice gold watch. Well, he must know what he's doing. Folks, you got to pay attention to what you're getting into because it really, really, truly matters to your long-term success of your investments. Just stop it. What's next?
Okay. The recent government cuts conducted by DOGE are going to have a significant impact on the federal deficit.
Oh, now we're just pissing people off left and right.
I got
now.
something else to say about this
Oh,
too.
good boy.
Yeah.
Here, we're going to have to tread carefully. Well,
Yeah.
first, just stop it, folks. Most of the deficit spending that we have, so in general, over at least the last several years, the federal government has brought in somewhere to the tune of $5 trillion in annual receipts, and they've spent somewhere to the tune of around $6.5 to $7 trillion in expenditures. The problem is I don't think anybody's going to argue against we need to try to eliminate corruption, we try to eliminate waste. I think that's fine. But saying that these things are going to have a significant impact on the federal deficit means that you don't fully understand how the federal deficit works. First, we as a nation, we are getting older and we are getting older quicker. And if you look at the percentage of our federal budget that is towards entitlements, generally speaking, towards people that we're all getting older, you're going to see that percentage is so high. Couple that with your military spending, that when you look at discretionary spending, which is what the part that DOGE is supposedly be going after, you're not making a big enough dent. Again, I'm not saying that there's not a reason to go look for fraud and waste. I get that. Again, just like I said in the past thing, have your eyes wide open at what the actual long-term impact is. If you want to know what is actually going to help the deficit, and
in your opinion?
In my opinion, and it's my show, so I'll give it, have younger people be treated as adults earlier. Age 18, man, you need to be productive and you need to be working and paying into the system. On the flip side of that, have incentives, not requirements, because that'd be no one's ever going to get voted in on requiring for people to work longer, but have incentives.
No.
Right, never, not once. Nor are they going to get voted in for threatening to tighten the belt on entitlements. It's not going to happen, right? Not, at least not in a long time. Yeah, trust me on this. But what you could do is you could give, for example, Michelle, on Social Security. Right now, your Social Security benefit will keep increasing the longer you wait to claim it up to age 70. Mm-hmm. Understood?
Yep.
Then it levels off.
Sure.
Okay. What if you made Social Security benefits for those willing to wait to claim until ages 71 through 75 extremely lucrative?
Okay.
Okay. That takes a tremendous burden
work
off
until
of
I'm 70, but
I understand, but if there's a financial incentive for you to keep working and delaying your Social Security, then you're taking that many people off of the entitlement expenditures, and now you're actually making a serious dent in your national deficit.
Okay.
Got it?
Here's my little aside to that about the government jobs.
All right, is this going to get us canceled?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay,
it's just
good.
something to
Let's do it.
noodle because it's frightening.
Right.
So USDA, for example, I did read. This was an article and it was on the interwebs, but it was legit. I mean, it wasn't somebody just talking.
Right.
It's like U.S. News World Report or something like that. But they did talk about they were concerned about the food supply in the United States because they're cutting USDA jobs for food inspectors, especially ones at ports when we're starting to get stuff in that are checking those things to see if they have some kind of critters that came from somewhere that could wipe out one of our crops. They're cutting those jobs. So it was a very frightening article about the food supply and how the government jobs being cut in the USDA are maybe not the best thing to be cutting.
Well, what you're talking about there, Michelle, is a supply chain issue.
Yeah, well, also when it gets here, though, too, Josh, there's food inspectors
I
that look
understand.
at stuff to make
No, I'm
sure there's
saying-
not some beetle in there that's going to wipe out the southeast, like the pine beetle or something like that.
That's
something
fair, but also from an economic standpoint, what you're creating is a bottleneck.
Yes.
Yeah, so a bottleneck, generally speaking, and I know we're going to talk about some of these things coming in.
We are.
So we're talking about two problems here. We're talking about they're cutting jobs to help not have this bottleneck so the needed materials can get to where they're supposed to go. And two, we're talking about what about the end result of safety? I can't answer the safety thing. I can just tell you that in economics, when you have a bottleneck in a supply chain, that leads to increased prices and scarcity of resources, and that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
So, very good.
All right. Next one. Investing in the stock market is just like gambling. People do think that, though.
People do think that,
That have
but
actually said out loud a lot.
I'm telling them now. I thought of this after we did show prep. I'm going to say just stop it, but I'm going to be fair. Investing in penny stocks is like gambling, right?
Right.
Investing in meme coins,
Yes.
or excuse me, in meme stocks, that is gambling. Just stop it when you're talking about investing in
general.
in the broad stock market, in A-rated, publicly traded companies. Here's why that's not just like gambling, because gambling is a zero-sum game. Crypto is a form of gambling, right? Or again, like I said earlier, the greater fool theory of investing. Now, Crypto Bro listening, maybe blockchain becomes a profitable enterprise. I'll be just as excited as anybody else that comes around. I've said this many times. Both these things can be true. The blockchain technology and cryptocurrency could both be life-changing and could be a complete waste of financial time. It could be like the Excel spreadsheet, which radicalized small business inventory in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Made some people wealthy, and now it's just a utility.
Right.
It could be, that's exactly how this could all shake out. But when it comes to actual investing in the stock market, you want to make sure that you have holdings that make sense. You want to have companies that have proven track records, or if they're not a profitable company, they're a growth company, maybe they're a tech company. A lot of people that bought Apple or Amazon early obviously experienced the benefits of that.
Yeah.
But as far as just raw gambling, when you go into the casino, you have an entire enterprise designed to take your money out of your pocket and not give it back. Right?
More than you guys know.
Yes.
From somebody that lived in Las Vegas for 2 years and knows a lot of their secrets.
Whereas the stock market is more about matching sellers with buyers at whatever the market dictates the price is. Very good. All right, we got any more?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
All
Let's
right.
keep trucking.
My investments inside my indexed universal life will grow just like the stock market, but with no downside risk. First of all, anytime somebody says no downside risk, then they're lying, correct?
I mean, yeah, for the most part.
There's risk in almost
I
there's
mean,
risk in
so
everything. There's risk in walking out the door every day.
Government treasury securities are considered, they say no risk, but very, very low risk, which was one of the things that caused all the consternation around the tariffs, because these seemingly no risk assets were not getting flooded to as the equity market was dumping out. But back to your point, index universal life insurance policies, similar line around the fixed index annuity policies. It's a lot of times same person, same advisor that sells these things. And I want to be fair, Michelle, and I try to be very fair on this. I'm not necessarily picking on the product, whether it's index universal life or IUL or fixed index annuities or any of the other insurance products. I'm not picking on the products. I mean, the sponsor of this show, Jay Stubbs, deals with risk management.
Right.
He deals with these products all the time. My heartburn has always been with how they are sold. And here's what I can tell you. When it comes to IULs, index universal life policies, they are complex, and they should be reserved for sophisticated investors with a specific need. First, there's a cost of insurance embedded in an IUL that's often overlooked. You have to pay for the death benefit somehow, right? So not all of your premium is going to go into the cash value. Also, it can be problematic when you take an actual withdrawal of your cash balance. More often than not, instead of a withdrawal, you're encouraged to take a loan. Be your own bank is how they sell it. So for those of you all listeners that are being pitched an IUL, especially if you're seriously considering buying it, here's the two pieces of advice I can give you that's actually going to help you versus me just being grumpy about them. First, only look at the guaranteed portion of the illustration you're being shown. The guaranteed portion. Anything you get above and beyond that guaranteed is gravy. Hypothetical illustrations, they at least give you a potential performance outcome, but I'm going to be honest with y'all, they're often not worth the paper they're printed on. 2, ask your producer for what's called the target premium number. Write that number down next to your total premium number, target and total. Write those two numbers down. Give me a call. Because if you're dead set on buying an IUL, undoubtedly we can help you through our affiliate or through our work with Jay Stubbs at Providence Partners. We can get you something with a lower target premium. Plain English, that means more of your hard-earned dollars go to your benefit versus increasing the profitability of the insurance company and the increasing the commission to the salesperson.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Right. Okay. All you financial advisors are just the same, just trying to sell me something.
That's probably right. That's probably fair on the second part. I mean, we're not doing this radio show for charity. We're hoping to develop new opportunities, and that's exactly when it's done, right?
Right.
And Michelle does it for the millions that she gets in endorsements. So
pro bono.
So, folks, there's all kinds of different advisors. We're running a little short on time, segment 1, but if you want to go to our website, gulfcoastfa.com, and go to the podcast tab, go to Coast Retirement, and there's a couple of recent episodes where we talk about the different type of advisors, specifically the difference between brokers and advisors and fee-for-service advisors. But, really, at the end of the day, what's important is that the investor understands what is being sold, because they are being sold to. Even us, even my fee-only brethren, I mean, they're trying to sell a service. They're not doing this for charity. They're doing this to make a living. And the main thing is that the investor understands what they're getting into. So, well, that was fun.
Yeah,
All right.
different.
That's
Sure.
different. All right.
Okay.
Well, folks, if you've liked what you've heard so far and you want to start your conversation about your own personal investing and retirement goals and dreams, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can call us at 251-327-2124 or go to our website, Gulf Coast FA is in financialadvisor.com. On our site, you can click in the blue button, upper right-hand corner. That will put a 15-minute introductory phone call on my calendar. Be sure to include your number if you want me to call you. Plus, for those of you all that like to do business in person like we do, that's downtown Fairhope in the Portico building, or Orange Beach off Canal Road, just down the road from the wharf, or in Mobile near the intersection of Dolphin Street and I-65. We'd love to meet you in person. All right, folks, coming up next, there's always a lot going on in the world, particularly the world of finance, investments, and money. Every week we scour the internet for financial articles related to our topic of the day. Special articles pertain to those of you in or near retirement. So join us after the break to hear Michelle and I break down this week's headlines in the Michelle with the Headlines of the Week segment. Stay tuned.
Woohoo.
A multidimensional financial services company, Providence Partners serves the needs of independent insurance, financial, and employee benefit professionals. The team at Providence Partners serves other business professionals like property and casualty agencies, registered investment advisors, community banks, and benefit brokers to assist in their clients' risk management planning. Whether an individual or business owner client, this planning includes income replacement protection, planning for extended healthcare costs, family needs, and generational transfers of wealth. At Providence Partners, we give you access to industry specialists. Those specialists focus on business succession, business owner planning, family and household protection, estate planning, planning for that income loss, or planning for long-term care solutions. Providence Partners is an Alabama-based company. We have offices in Birmingham and along the Gulf Coast. Our website is providencepartners.org, and you can reach us any of the working days.
Welcome back to Coasting in Retirement. Your host, Josh Miller here. So as we discussed before the break, every week we scour what Michelle calls the interwebs for financial articles related to our topic of the day, special articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. Our job, or at least we tell ourselves it is to help you all understand how these headlines impact you, especially when it comes to your money. Now note, if you want to read our referenced articles yourself, we include the links to the articles on our show transcript, which you can find on the website, gulfcoastfa.com. Just look under the podcast tab and find the episode where you want to read more of the articles. With all that said, and without further ado, here's Michelle with the headlines of the week.
Okay, let's just dive into the investing elephant in the room.
Hey, we've already burned enough
I
bridges
know,
in
yes,
the
we
first
got till
segment.
baby elephant. So I'm talking about tariffs, obviously. Tariffs. There's been a whole bunch of talk about tariffs, but there's also been a whole bunch of crawfishing about tariffs. And if people don't know what that means
Most of the
walking it
listeners are
back.
south, so
Yeah,
they know.
walking it back. Yeah. Okay, so this one is from Fox Business, and our first headline reads, "Stocks rocked after Fed's Powell talks tariff impact." Most major indexes experienced yet another sell-off after Federal Chairman Jerome Powell stated this week that the Fed is going to, quote, stand down on any upcoming rate cuts because the tariffs were, in his view, larger than expected. How much should the average investor be concerned about all of this tariff and interest rate talk and crawfishing of said tariffs.
Well, I will say one thing quickly. Both previous guests on the show, Jay Stubbs and John Luke Tyner of Aptus, were a little more optimistic about tariffs than I thought they would be. Because I, as regular listeners know, I'm coming at it from an economist standpoint. I have an economics degree from the Harvard of the Midwest, which I don't even know if I can say Harvard anymore, but I'm going to view this from a supply and demand thing. So before I get into my explanation of my discussion of this headline, I do think it's important that investors really understand that Jerome Powell does not give a whatever you want to say there. I've never seen a Fed chair so seemingly unconcerned with anything other than his primary goal of breaking inflation. Now, you could be a fan of that. You could not be a fan of that. I can tell you he's the opposite of what you and I grew up with, which was Alan Greenspan, which would kind of blow in any direction that the market wanted him to blow. And he was our for 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And I'm pretty confident Jerome Powell's going to come over to low fire the next couple of weeks. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays
Trump's
out.
been after him since day one.
Maybe, but we'll.
No, he says that.
Well, fair on that, but we'll see how much more heat comes. Again, I'm putting on my economics hat, and here's what I'm going to say. I took countless economics courses in college, right? Not one of them, Michelle, ever said that tariffs would reduce the price of goods or even keep prices
That's not what I remember
level.
with tariffs either.
No, because when you look at supply and demand,
Yeah.
unless you raise demand or
We're gonna
decrease
pass that
demand,
stuff on.
the prices got to go somewhere. Tariffs, no matter what your news is telling you, tariffs will undoubtedly raise prices on certain things if they're fully implemented. It is a mathematical certainty. And usually, when prices go up, that's called inflation. And usually when prices go up, the Fed typically raises rates, not reduces them, because they're trying to get inflation down. Higher prices plus higher interest rates is called stagflation. Those of you that were adults when President Jimmy Carter was president will recognize that term, and that is something that the stock market does not want to see. What made last week so alarming is that usually, and we talked about this on the last show, when you were playing hooky. You were playing hooky. Is when investors flee the stock market, they typically go into quote unquote safe investments. It's called a flight to safety.
Yeah, sure.
One of those being long-term treasuries. That was not happening, and that's why you
Climb
saw
to safety. It's a widespread song.
That's why you saw the crawfishing happening so quick, because it was not an expected outcome. What does that mean in plain English, folks? It means that the investors had broadly, at least temporarily, I'm not talking about you, individual investor. I'm talking broad swath of investors had lost a certain amount of confidence in the United States federal government's long-term securities and the dollar, and that's not good.
That's not great.
All right, so that's what's going on there. I got more to say, but I think that's enough.
Wow,
on
that's
that for now.
awful. So invigorating. Great news there. Okay.
Well, okay. Allow me to give a counterpoint before we move on.
Okay.
If we actually do bring more high quality, we don't have time to flesh this out.
Sure.
I'm going to say this to be fair.
Stay tuned.
Because the United States has a history of using tariffs, and we've seen our own competitors use tariffs to develop their own industries. So if we are able to bring high value manufacturing and production back to the United States, then I am all for it. It's just it has been too much of a whipsaw to have any clarity. That's why all Jerome Powell has to do is say, no, I'm not budging, and the market jumps out yes again. That's why. The market is raw right now, very raw.
All right.
What's next?
Okay, this one's from U.S. News and World Report. Their recent article is titled Recession 2025, What to Watch and How to Prepare. It talks about the Federal Open Market Committee, which I'd never heard of and sounds just as made up as Doge. So anyway, this article details how several economics models are putting the changes of a recession in the next 12 months in the 30 to 50% range and dives into the macroeconomic reasons why, including the unknown impact of the ongoing tariff battles. Now, this article makes an argument for selling volatile stocks, looking for defensive stocks such as Walmart, and investing in a CD or simply going into cash and sitting it out. What do you think about all this? Some of the math does not math in this article, so I get what they're going with in some of these.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So in general, Michelle, when anyone asks me if we're going to a recession, I always answer yes. Yeah. Now, am I a pessimistic person?
No.
No. Right. I'm actually a pretty optimistic person. But the answer to that question is yes, we are going to go into a recession. It's just a matter of when, because
Household debt's $18 trillion.
that's a different argument. But for this, our capitalism-based economy was built to experience recessions. In fact, it wouldn't function without the occasional cleaning out of excess capital and reappropriating some of that capital to other more efficient or future growth opportunities. So, and I'm saying this as someone that obviously deeply, deeply felt the effects of the great, quote unquote, Great Recession of 2008. I was a developer and a home builder then, not a great time to be in that business. And I can tell you that, obviously, from my own personal experience, recessions can and do result in real pain to everyday people. That said, I implore the listeners, you listeners, to not be terrified of the potential of a recession. Don't let it dominate your daily thoughts about your investment portfolio and what you're trying to do to get to your end goal. Because on a couple of reasons. One, on the investment management side, your portfolio should have a plan when the market is struggling or experiencing high volatility. If it doesn't, you need to give us a call at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and we can talk about that. Two, investors with long-term financial goals, they have another alternative as well. And it's somewhat what I'm saying here is, I don't want you to stick your hand in your head in the sand, but simply ignore a recession and stay the course. And not even necessarily ignore the recession. Ignore the chatter of the recession. Have a portfolio that's built to handle volatility, and then trust in your plan to weather you through the undoubtedly coming recession, whether it's in 1 month or 6 months or 12 months or 5 years. It's coming at some point. We're overdue for a prolonged correction. In fact, there's a well-known economist. I'm going to quote him. I don't have his name, Michelle, so do credit if he's listening. Markets correct and adjust over time as shocks occur. Since 1946, the S&P 500 has dropped an average of 32% from its highs during bear markets, but has taken only an average of 23 months to fully recover those losses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Ultimately,
That's kind of
and still
impressive.
quoting him, ultimately, this situation, while painful for invested assets, offers opportunities to invest at lower valuations, i.e. hopefully buy in a long-term
Low,
discount,
yeah.
and eventually the market will recover and investors will be rewarded. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay.
Brigatti, that was
Yeah,
his name.
yeah.
Yes.
Chris Brigatti.
Chris Brigatti. Pardon,
Yeah.
Chris.
That's
I
in
know
the
you're
article.
listening.
Right.
Nerdville, what we got next?
Are we doing number 4?
Keep doing number 3.
Okay, we're going to go to number 3 as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of good financial advice, let's pivot to an area we probably will all agree typically gives terrible financial advice, yet has the ears of millions of investors. It's called social media. Our buddy, old Chuck Schwab, has an article on his site titled Social Media and Your Money. Follow with caution. Tread lightly. This article has common sense advice, but I thought it was important to bring up because often during turbulent times, people get more desperate for answers around financial questions. So, Josh, tell us a little bit more about the dangers of listening to social media and these finfluencers, or
Finfluencers.
anybody else that's claiming to have the golden ticket to riches,
Right. It's kind of this, so hopefully these headlines.
or AI gobbledygook.
Right. The listeners hopefully hear the tie-in of what we were saying in the beginning. The first part of the segment was, just stop it. Because this comes in, Michelle and I are on social media. We're not super active, but we pay attention. And because the algorithm tracks me and everyone else, I get a disproportionate amount of financial advertisements and finfluencers and all that. And some of them are fine. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Josh Brown of Ritz-Holtz Wealth, and I think he's probably in the category of considered a finfluencer, but I think his advice is solid and at least has common sense behind it. The other side of it is all the ridiculous stuff. And you weren't here again, Michelle. You're once again playing hooky. But
Yeah, right.
Jay Stubbs, the episode I did with Jay Stubbs, I talked about my own ridiculous experience with following terrible advice from a charismatic figure. It was a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Do you
I remember that,
Yeah.
but I'm not a dad, so I didn't read it.
That's fair. I don't think I was then either. Robert Kiyosaki, I think's his name. That stupid book cost me more money and more headache than anything I could have ever done. It was just the dumbest thing ever because what it was basically a system of over leveraging to buy real estate assets and then turn those assets into income producing. Nothing wrong with that necessarily of borrowing some money to produce an income on a real estate asset, but he was basically trying to do no money down, and it all worked until it didn't work because once they started raising rates and banks started tightening lending, that not only did the opportunity for that spinning plate type of investing to stop, the music stopped.
Plate, that's funny.
They also started calling loans. They started marking their loans down. If they'd given you a no money down loan on a $500,000 real estate investment property, and now it's worth $400,000, they want that $100. They want $100,000 cash.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't work in the long run. So be careful, folks. That's why Michelle brought up that headline. Social media is not all bad. I mean, there's a great way for people like us to break through and talk to a larger audience. But you just got to be so careful with who you're following and the advice that they're giving. If you want no nonsense feedback on something you're hearing, especially on social media, just give us a call. We'll give you the straight skinny. So, all right, we got one more?
Yes. All right, you've discussed hedged equities a lot on the show, particularly on the episodes where I'm not here and you're talking to JT or Aptus Capital or somebody else. So, but I know from these discussions that the goal of hedging a portfolio is to attempt to take advantage of stock market volatility. So I would imagine this concept is being put to the test this week.
Yes, yeah, and last week and the week before.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So for our last article, I turned to trusted site Investopedia with their article titled Hedge Definition and How It Works in Investing. I actually enjoyed this article because it was a good tutorial on hedging and stuff like that, which was nice.
Well, I think Investopedia is one of the ones, sometimes we look at sites and we're like, well, has that become a political thing? I don't think anybody's got a political position against Investopedia, right?
I mean, probably, actually. Who knows? I mean, it's hard to say.
If you have an issue with Investopedia, don't call. Yeah, keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, just stop it.
All right. So anyway, how does Gulf Coast Financial Advisors use hedges in its clients' portfolios, and why do you think this is the best strategy, or is it?
Well, that's a great question. I will tell, for the full explanation of that, listeners, if you want to hear J.D. Gardner, Michelle referenced J.D. Gardner of Aptus Capital Advisors or John Luke Tyner of Aptus Capital Advisors, again, go to our website and go to our podcast tab and find those conversations, because now you'll be able to hear an hour-long discussion about what I'm going to sum up in 30 seconds or so. But we do use a certain amount of hedging on our portfolio. We, as J.D. says, to give fair credit on a quote, you want to capture the upside, or at least a significant part of the upside of your portfolio, but you want to hedge. You want to hedge to protect the downside of it. So I think for us, it's been proven over a long period of time that equities have the greatest capability, not a guarantee, but greatest capability for compounded growth. So we want to have, appropriate to a client's investment risk tolerance, we want to have at least some exposure in the equity market, so long term we can take advantage of that potentially higher compounded growth versus other investment choices. However, if that's the engine of the investment portfolio, we want to have some breaks. That's where the hedging comes in. It's not a perfect formula, but when you have extreme volatility like we've experienced the last couple of weeks, and one would argue the last couple of years, what it does is it gives you an opportunity to at least generate some capital so that you can be buying when people are looking for the exit door, and hopefully it works out that you're buying at a long-term discount. Again, nothing is guaranteed. All investing involves risk, but if you were to ask me, I think it's as far as being able to give you the most upside potential with an appropriate amount of downside protection, I think that's where it works the best with how we do it. And I think, the fixed index annuity can make a somewhat similar argument, but if somebody wants to sit, I can do a side-by-side portfolio to show you how, yes, fixed index annuities have a 0% floor. That's great, but there's a lot of limiting to the upside potential, and that needs to be part of the conversation. Very good. Investopedia.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Well, listeners, I hope you learned something from our discussion around these recent financial headlines. All of this matters to your money. Speaking of money, if you'd like to start the conversation with us about your investments and retirement planning, I encourage you to give us a call. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or go to our website, gulfcoastfa.com. Click on the blue button, upper right-hand corner. That'll put a 15-minute conversation place marker on my calendar. Or better yet, just reach out to us, schedule an in-person conversation in any of our 3 offices. That's downtown Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. All right, folks, coming up next, Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What have been some of my predictions? Have I been right? Was I ever wrong? How wrong? What I think is going to affect investors in the near future or maybe the distant future? We talk about all these things and poke a little fun at my big mouth. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own 2 hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, are growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA as in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back. Your host Josh Knoll here alongside co-host Michelle Lee Melton. So, I'm opinionated, have strong opinions at times. I would say a radio show host that isn't opinionated probably would be very dull to listen to, right, Michelle?
Correct.
Yes. And I'm paid in my profession to offer professional guidance and opinions to my clients. Otherwise, what use am I? Just replace me with AI. Ugh. I like making predictions, and while I feel I'm usually proved right, there are times I swing and miss. So if you want to hear me a little crow, let's get at it with Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What you got?
So, Josh, a little over 2 months ago, we hosted a Coasting in Retirement episode titled Slaying the Stock Market Boogeyman. Do you remember that?
I do. Very well.
At the time of that episode, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was about 45,000. The S&P 500 was about 6,000. And the NASDAQ Composite Index was pushing 20,000. Well, with this week's stock sell-off, the Dow is down over 6,000 points, the NASDAQ is off nearly 4,000 points, and the S&P is down over 700 points. So, or in other words, all the indexes are well within what is considered correction territory.
Right.
So, our discussion during that episode centered around how the various stock market indexes had consistently gone up and to right during the past 50 plus years. So investors should not give into fear selling of certain financial products or services.
Right.
So, Josh, do you still stand by your prediction that the S&P would close the end of 2025 at 6,500? And what do you have to say about your recent stance that investors should not fear the stock market? It seems pretty frightening right now.
Well, like I told you before, you take that and $2, and that'll buy you a cheap cup of coffee at the gas station. But so let's talk about that. The indexes, what you just rattled off. When we recorded that episode just right at 2 months ago, the Dow was at 45,000. Recent close, we're recording this during the week. The recent close is around 39,000. So that's 6,000 down. That's significant. NASDAQ 20,000. It's down to 16. And the S&P, which is, in my opinion, is probably the one that is the most widely utilized index. I could be wrong there, but that's one that we seem to use a lot in our various exercises. The S&P is down, 700 points. So it was at, where was it at? It was at 6,000, and now it's at 5,300. It's crazy. If you were to look at the point drops of the major crashes of the market over the last handful of decades.
How does that compare?
These numbers are way bigger just because the indexes have gotten so much bigger.
Sure.
Right. So now back to the point. We were saying don't fear the stock market boogeyman. And one would think that having said that and being encouraging on long-term investing and the market while experiencing dips tends to go up and to the right, you think that I'd eat a little crow on this because the indexes are really down.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's fair to some degree. However, this show is for if you were about to retire and you had to you were going to live for 1 month of retirement and you had to retire a month ago and you had taken and left all your money in, I would look like an idiot, right? But that's not the case for most people. Most people are retiring, they've got time horizon, at least some amount of time horizon. They should have, at least for some part of their portfolio, they should have a long-term outlook on those investments, right?
Yes.
And when you have a long-term outlook, you understand a couple of things. One, that in any long period of time, just like we said earlier in the show, is there going to be a recession in the United States? The answer is yes. Now,
right.
If you can predict when, I'll bring you on and we'll check your crystal ball. No one knows, but there's going to be a recession. So you should have a portfolio that is prepared for when things don't go according to plan, that has some type of downside action that helps you when things are getting rough, right? And two, you should know that if you have, generally speaking, not always a guarantee, because no one knows, you don't want to just be a blind buy the dip investor, and no one knows when the true bottom is past you until you're past the true bottom. But Jay Stubbs brought up a great point last time, is this is a great time to look at dollar cost averaging into the market. You automatically do that already, Michelle, with your retirement accounts. So credit to you, over the last couple of months, you have been buying securities at a 10 to 15% discount compared to where they were earlier in the year, and potentially where they may be in the future. Because remember, when you have interest-paying instruments like a CD or a money market account or a bond, you gain the interest from those products, but they don't have any profit and they don't have capital appreciation. Those are the two extra things you get with an equity position. You can get increased capitalization if there's more demand than supply and the price goes up. You can get profit taking if it's a profited and spits off dividends, which is corporate profits. So there's all these factors that go into, if you look long term, yes, in the short term, slaying the stock market boogeyman on those high averages doesn't look too good now, but we got a long way to go. And we will see. I said 6,500.
Stay tuned.
John Luke Tyner says 6,200.
Okay.
JD says 6,800.
All right.
Price is right. We shall see.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed a little peek into how we form our opinions and make predictions. We invite you, one last time, if you'd like to have a no-pressure, no-obligation conversation with us about your investing goals and retirement dreams, then just give us a call, 251-327-2124, or visit the website, gulfcoastfa.com, FA as in financialadvisor.com. Blue button, upper right-hand corner, that's a 15-minute introductory phone call on my calendar. Plus, you can always schedule a good old-fashioned in-person meeting at any of our 3 offices, downtown Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. All right, folks, that's it. That's a wrap for it this week. I want to give you a huge thank you to my returning lovely co-host, Michelle Lee Melton.
Oh, yes, back. Not in black. I'm actually bright
dressed. The listeners were
today.
missing you.
That's nice.
They were, for sure. Thank you to our show sponsor, that's Providence Partners and Mr. Jay Stubbs. Thank you to our 2 awesome radio stations, that's FM Talk 106.5 out of Mobile and WHEP 92.5 FM and 1310 AM out of Foley. Many thanks to the provider of our show music, that's local band Sloth Racer. Huge thank you to the show producer, that's my son Peyton Null. We're going to see him later tonight. And as always, my sincere appreciation for all of you out there that have been listening and joining us on this journey. We'd love to be a part of your journey as well. Till we talk again, have a wonderful and productive week. This has been Coasting in Retirement with Josh Null. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, LLC, known as GCFA, is a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Alabama and in such other jurisdictions where it is registered, filed the required notices, or is otherwise excluded or exempted from such registration and/or notice filing requirements. Registration does not indicate or imply that GCFA has attained a particular level of skill or ability, nor does it constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, or any other state securities regulator. The Coasting in Retirement radio program serves mainly to disseminate general information, including those pertaining to GCFA's advisory services, together with access to additional investment-related information, publications, materials, and links. The publication of this radio show should not be construed by any client and/or prospective client as GCFA's solicitation to effect or attempt to effect transactions in securities, nor should be interpreted as GCFA providing personalized investment advice or any type of professional advice for compensation wherever this program is broadcast. Any subsequent direct communication by GCFA with a prospective client will be conducted by a representative that is either registered or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from registration in the state where the prospective client resides. Certain information, news stories, headlines, data, charts, graphs, figures, or statistics presented on this radio program may have been obtained from third-party sources that are believed to be generally reliable, but which GCFA may not have independently verified. GCFA does not and cannot guarantee the timeliness, accuracy, or reliability of any such third-party information and undertakes no obligation to update or correct any information that may become obsolete, unreliable, or inaccurate. This radio program also contains the opinions, views, and perspectives expressed by Josh Knoll and any other GCFA representative, which are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, views, or perspectives of GCFA as a firm. Such personal views and opinions should not be construed as endorsements or professional advice from GCFA. GCFA makes no representation or warranty regarding the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any information on this radio program and disclaims any liability for any direct or indirect loss or damage incurred from using or relying on such information. GCFA and Providence Partners are not affiliated, nor are any of their respective representatives.